What's going on, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. So for today's video, man, an interesting one. I'm going to show you a bunch of different ways to set up your Conga drums, from 2 drums all the way to 6 drums. And as well, I'm going to show you my favorite drum setup. It's about to be pretty interesting, y'all, but you gotta love it. You already know what day it is. It's Tutorial Thursdays. Welcome to Percussion Life. My name is Eric Perez. If you're new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. And if you haven't already, please hit that like, subscribe, and notification button just so you can find out whenever I upload. And to all my day ones, thank you so much for all the love, continued support, patience. Yeah, man, making these videos is tough, but we got to keep it moving. And I did want to show briefly just how, because I get a lot of questions. Y'all. A lot of questions on how I set up my drums, what advice, and I just rather just put it all in one video, especially for those that play 2, 3, even 4 drums. I get a bunch of those questions and just wanted to give some suggestions. Now, the purpose of this video, so you guys know, I'm going to show different setups that I personally used and setups that I know a lot of famous drummers use as well. And I'm going to try to relay the pros and cons of each setup and my personal opinion on each one. Again, everybody has a specific bias and their comfortability when they play. So there's just whatever you feel comfortable, as long as it's not going to cause damage or injury to your body, especially when you're setting up. And yes, that matters. Your setup matters on the health of your body, especially when playing, and of course not straining yourself. But yeah, just kind of wanted to start off with the first set. So here I have 2 drums. I have a conga and a tumba, so 11.75 and 12.5-inch drum. And I don't actually like it this close. I personally like to have it towards a little bit towards my dominant side, but at an angle. So not so much right next to me. I like it at an angle where I'm able to kind of be able to tilt the drum in a way where I have control of my main drum, but I'm not so far away from the tumba. And for me, I just think this is just a traditional way of playing it. I've seen people really put the drum all the way out here and play that way because they're bigger and they have longer arms. That's completely fine. Again, it's whatever works for you and makes you feel comfortable. The whole point is not to outstretch or strain yourself. But in my case, I feel comfortable playing this way. Now, I've seen people set up this way, and I get it. Some people have been really accustomed playing on stands, so when they play sit down, this is just their setup. I personally can't. I feel kind of restrained. If you see, I'm a little bit more relaxed on this side and a little bit kind of just stressed out on this side, but some people make it work. I personally can't do it. I need it a little bit more right there, man. I just can't. I love it, but and I understand it. Again, I get it, but I think a huge con of that, it's not really good, especially for maybe the rotation of your arm, and as well, you're not really taking advantage of all the power that you can have when you're actually playing from a position like this. So if you play 2 drums, this is an option. Now for this other setup, it's a setup of 3 drums. And yes, this is a pretty common setup on 3 drums. It's very popular, especially in old school sense and as well as a new school sense. A lot of people like Bobby Allende and Mark Quiñones have adopted this kind of setup, especially on 3 drums. And it's really cool. And I think Poncho Sanchez as well plays with this kind of setup. And Personally, for me, it's not my cup of tea. I feel really uncomfortable, and it's just I've tried it, and I've never kind of found the flow. But there are so many advantages with this setup, and yeah, first let me kind of like show you how I would try to play this setup, but it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard. Yeah, this position is actually really hard. I am someone that loves to extend both of my hands. So really practice on my non-dominant hand and the extension to kind of replicate what I'm able to do with my dominant hand. And whenever I am, and as well, I'm used to that kind of setup, but I do feel kind of constrained when doing so when trying to hit the third drum. But man, there are a lot of advantages, especially if you're, somebody that's really dependent and as well plays very traditionally. Man, your dominant hand is doing a lot of work, which is awesome, man. Like, especially when trying to make a melody. Yeah, this setup, especially if you're someone that really leans and depends on their dominant hand, go for this setup. I think it works. I think it's really cool on melody. I would probably extend the tumba a little bit more. Yeah, I think that allows me to feel a little bit more natural. But yeah, the pros again, everything is so, I would say, close right here, and you're really able to, like, it's right there. It's right there in front of you. The con as well, especially if you have kind of this look where it's the lowest, mid, high. Here it's a tumba, conga, conga, but I have this tuned a little bit lower than my main drum. But I would think that that kind of setup, you would want to, make sure maybe this one maybe a little bit lower. I'm not sure how. It really depends. I think it really depends on what your lowest drum is meant to do. Like, if you're really focused on this side, yeah, like if you're trying to make accents on this lower drum, like boom, like that beat drop kind of feel. It really depends. Now, if it's gonna be just a traditional way of playing, that's where for me it is harder because of how I'm so accustomed playing and extending my hands in a certain way where it's more of a not so much of a V, like a sharp V, but at least it's not that extended. So I would probably ideally would want this drum like right here, which I think you can make, you know, something like this maybe. Maybe. Yeah, I think that feels a little bit more natural for me. It's still kind of like what I'm used to, but I got this third drum right here. It's not really in front of me, but it's right there to the angle. So I would still say it's still hard for me. I really like to extend, but yeah, this setup is pretty nice. I might have to try this in the future for other videos. Yeah, really like it. On to the next setup. Now, for 4 drums, it's a little bit different. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 4 different ways that people would normally set up. This way right here is really adopting the previous setup that some people use. I'm going to show you how some people set up and then how I would normally set up when I'm playing 4 drums. But in this case, again, we're adopting the same kind of setup from the previous 3 drum setup, but we are adding another one to our non-dominant side. Normally, people set up in 1 or 2 ways, either with a drum that's a note in between the main drum and the other lowest drum, or they'll put like a quinto to the side where it's just, again, to use as reference, and I'm going to show that. But to kind of hear how these sound, yeah, so I kind of have it tuned in a way where it makes practical sense in how you would play. Yeah, this you could have a lot of fun with this setup because, again, if you're used to playing this way, adding a drum where it would be, I would say, close to your knee, not so much here on the side. I've seen it, again, towards this way. Yeah, I've seen it bunch of ways. I think by having it near your knee to the opposite side, I think it's gonna probably work better that way. But yeah, I think this setup works. I think it works with, again, people that are used to this setup right here, having a drum where you're able to extend your non-dominant hand. Man, you're exercising all of that all at the same time. Yeah, I think you can have a lot of fun with this setup. Now, look how the drastic change happens when we just simply change that to a quinto. So here I have a 10-inch quinto to my non-dominant side. Again, this is meant to kind of like replicate. It's not really based on the sizes, but it's more on tone and tonal range. But yeah, I have a 13-inch tumba, 12.5-inch tumba. And on the previous setup, it was a 11.7-inch conga. And then my main drum is an 11.7-inch conga. But yeah, like just by adding a quinto, Again, I'm not used to this setup. I think this is kind of weird setting up this way. Anyway, but yeah, you can have a lot of fun with this particular setup. Again, I think the best way if you're gonna play, because what I just did doesn't make sense at all. But if you're gonna play traditionally, right, and you're, let's say you have a conga solo and you really wanted to kind of just solo off a quinto, just like it just makes sense just to literally have that. You're gonna play. Again, I'm just trying to throw out ideas why this would benefit anybody, but I've seen it happen. I've seen a lot of modern players use the setup, and I think it makes even more sense, especially if you're gonna do some traditional rumba, or you're gonna want to solo really just on the quinto. I think it makes sense. So yeah, let me show you another way to set up 4 drums. All right, so I have 4 drums here. All I did is really change the layout. I have the 13-inch tumba now in front of me, and I actually have my more preferred way of setting up, a little V kind of setup. And here again, I have, to my dominant side, I'm gonna have a 12.5-inch tumba, and normally I would have a conga. If I have another tumba, I will put another tumba to my non-dominant side. But here I would have a conga, and then my main drum has always been a conga. I prefer playing on that playing field. And if I had 4 drums and I'm really just looking for a melodic approach, this would be it. Yeah, I feel comfortable playing this way because the thing is that this has not changed for me in the sense of how my setup is. And also, if you look at my hand motions, if you look at how comfortable I am navigating through each tone. So I know with my non-dominant hand, I'm going to use it for the drum in front of me. And for my dominant hand, I'm going to use it between these 2 drums, which leaves me time and space for this other drum to my non-dominant side. Again, making it more natural to navigate these drums. Yeah, again, I'm just trying to point out just the obvious in the sense of my way of feeling comfortable in approaching a 4 drum setup. And again, this is just for more melodic playing. I would probably use this as accent when it comes to my melodic playing. So I would tune mainly these drums to really kind of emphasize the melody that I'm playing on. Yeah, I would probably tune this a lot lower, just again to make a little bit more emphasis to the natural range between these 3 drums, to then have this as an accent. Now, what it would sound like if I just to switch this 1 drum to the quinto. Now, this is another favorite of mine, and yeah, I think this setup is actually pretty cool. I saw, if I remember correctly, Traveling Through Time DVD with Giovanni Hidalgo and Horacio El Negro Hernandez, and I saw Giovanni Hidalgo kind of set up this way. He had the LP Giovanni Galaxy Palladium series, and he had the 14-inch tumba in front of him. He had a 12.5-inch tumba next to him. Then he had his quinto and the conga, and he had it this way. And I think I actually made a video on it. I'll try to link it. But this setup has always kind of intrigued me. Then I switched it up later on, and I think I'm going to show you how I switched it up later on. But yeah, it always intrigued me, this little setup, because as well, this doesn't really feel natural, but it does obligate you, especially if you're going to approach it a certain way, where your non-dominant hand is going to start to do a lot of independence. I remember, especially really early on, I loved this setup. Not my favorite anymore. I was always playing it, but it's not my favorite. I actually switched it to this way, where I moved this drum here, and then I moved the quinto to front of me. And that made it a lot more natural, and especially when I started to add a fifth drum, it made me a little bit just play natural when approaching this set. And so, yeah, I don't think I'm going to show that, but yeah, if I were to play 4 drums, it's normally that way. Actually, yeah, let me show you. Let me show it to you guys so you guys can see what I mean. All right, yeah, so this is kind of how I used to normally set up when I play 4 drums. It's normally the lower drum to my dominant side, mid, low, main, and then the quinto, and that would allow me to really use this as a soloing time, a moment where I can really just grab and start playing. Yeah, and I started to do the bell pattern that way, made it just a lot more natural, and yeah, have more fun. But yeah, let me show you how I set up with 5 drums. Now, this is my favorite 5 drum setup. I know it's slightly different than I've seen some other people put maybe their quinto on this side, maybe their lowest drum to their dominant side, and kind of set up a little bit differently. I like this again because I think it's practical. The pro here is I'm kind of gonna be able to land naturally on the melodic kind of drums, and as well when it comes to if I wanted to use the quinto to like solo or use it as the bell pattern again, I'm able to really kind of like, it's right there, it's right next to me. And as well, I have it at an angle where it's not far off, it's not different, and I could play, again, more traditionally if I needed to play 2 drums or even 3 drums in this manner. Or if I, again, wanted to use more the lower drum as an accent. So that's the pro. Here's the con. You don't need 5 drums. You know, I used to be a guy that played 5 drums all the time, and man, it's fun. It's fun, but you have to pick your places to do so. And it should be only for specific songs, specific genres, not for everything. So it's not really practical, you know, it doesn't really make sense all the time. I think 4 maybe the max if it's needed, but man, like with 2 drums or 3 drums, I think you're perfectly fine. But here, when I used to play, it's because I was doing a lot of people parts. I was probably like the main percussionist and wanted to do a lot of different parts that I was able to just do with my hands. And I think it would make sense because sometimes I didn't have a bongo player, and it would just be a drummer, and I would want a bell, so I would do that bell pattern. yeah, I think that it makes sense sometimes. But again, I think this setup is a little bit more practical. You get, again, that kind of natural motion. You also have the natural motion if you're going this way. And as well if you're going to go this way. Yeah, I think that makes more sense, especially if you're going to play 5 drums. It feels a lot more naturally to do so. But yeah, let me add a 6th drum. This is about to be crazy. Yeah, this is kind of crazy. Yeah, 6 drums. I think that's a little bit too much, y'all. But I've played them before. I think I've done it live once. Don't recommend it. There's just a lot of stuff going on. Have I practiced with it? Yes, I have definitely practiced with 6 drums, and I actually dedicated a solo to my beloved brother who passed away over a year ago, and I use it because of the melody. There's the melody that I wanted to kind of get, and I think that's when it makes sense. I don't feel comfortable when maybe playing a traditional way, but I get it. And in that sense, I think the size of the drums makes sense of which ones you're picking. I think it makes sense where you're also gonna go. When I'm playing 6 drums, though, I will say I try to make it as, again, practical as possible. I want it to make sense for my hands to move. So in this case, I'll have the lowest drum to my non-dominant side, and then the middle tone here in this way. And again, I'll put the quinto to my kind of the front, so if I need to kind of access it, it's a lot easier. So yeah, fun to practice with. I think it really does challenge you to move around, and haven't practiced it in a while, but this is fun. I do kind of miss it. So if you see the little kid in me, yeah, because I think that especially when I was a lot younger, trying to develop moving my hands around, I wanted to really just develop my non-dominant hand to feel comfortable, to know where to go. And that's hard. That is definitely a challenge to move in such a way where you feel good and comfortable. But in this sense, I'll have the 13-inch tumba to my non-dominant side. I'll have a 12.5-inch tumba to my dominant side. Then here are my other wings. I'll have the Conga 11.75 inch, then another 11.75 inch. I would generally like to play on a Conga here in this case, but I'll try to shoot for a quinto. So here's an 11-inch. And why? Because I want this to be distinctive. And if I'm playing at this way, it's because I want something bright. So I'm looking for a quinto sound. So an 11-inch, you could, again, tune it like a conga as well, so it's not a problem. But then after that, I'll have the my quinto or requinto 10-inch right in front of me, so there's at least that distinctive range. Yeah, gotta love it. Now, to finish this video, let me show you my favorite drum setup. Yep, you guessed it. This one right here. I've been hinting it throughout the whole video. This setup where it's kind of like a V shape. To me, I think it's traditional. I fell in love with this setup from an instructional video called Conga Virtuoso, I think it was, from Giovanni Hidalgo. He shows a 3-drum setup, which I think at the time, his setup was a tumba, a conga, and a quinto, 11-inch quinto. But he tuned it in a mid-range. And I really started to adopt that because at the moment, I did have 3 drums, and it was a conga, tumba, and quinto. And so I moved it and really loved kind of playing on an 11.75-inch surface. But then when I got these drums from Moperc, and I remember asking for the specs. I wanted a 13-inch tumba, and I also wanted a 12.5-inch tumba as well, along with an 11.75-inch conga and the quinto that I have. That was my first setup with Moperc, and I had that setup. And I remember this was my gig setup for a pretty long time, and I loved it. Was it hard to kind of move a 13-inch big tumba? That thing is big, man. It has a nice belly, but I think you can't beat this, man. You have 2 nice sounding tumbas to your side, and then you have a nice size conga as your main drum. And I've always just felt comfortable playing with this. I think this range and this setup, I have the ability to kind of move. If I'm feeling like I'm probably extending a lot more, I can kind of make space. If I feel like I want it closer, I can. I think the con here is definitely that you have to have a pretty strong non-dominant hand to make sure that tone is right. Yeah, I really love this setup. Has been my favorite for years now, and I try to always practice this way. It really challenges my non-dominant hand to be crisp with my opens, to be crisp with my muffs, my close slaps, my open slaps. Yeah, just simply extending your hand to an opposite direction and causing it to do something. It's especially adding force like a close slap just really strengthens your hand. It's my recommendation to a lot of people. A lot of people don't like it because they're saying, man, that's hard, and I get it, because you do miss out, especially when I was setting up that way where the true drums here, man, you could do, like, I get that. But now it's causing you to develop a technique where you can still do kind of that roll. Like, you just have to kind of get used to this motion. So it does require a lot of work, but man, it's a workout. I love it. It keeps me healthy. It keeps me kind of trained to play at a specific level, man. And it's been my favorite. It's one that I constantly recommend. But alright, y'all, really do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, this intention wasn't to show off, but it's really more to show all the different styles and variations of setups that people have made. A lot of legends came up with that setup. I didn't. You know, I'm just probably maybe picking and choosing certain parts and kind of creating my own setup. But, you know, people like Patato Valdez, you know, Carlos Patato Valdez, and people like Candido Camero set up that way, man. And they kind of set up the trademark for us to learn from that, to learn the melodies they created and to grow from it, man. And for me, this has always been one that I personally love, man. This 3-drum setup where I feel like I can express myself a lot more. I feel more comfortable and free. Yeah, so, yeah. Let me know which setup you prefer.